I built the AI system after midnight for 2 years. Not on company time. Not on company laptops. Not with company money. Every line of code, every model, every timestamp belonged to my private holding company. Then my CEO stood on stage at a luxury investor retreat and presented it as his own breakthrough vision. The room applauded. The stock price jumped. CNBC called him a genius. And I sat in the third row, saying nothing. Because he didn't know one thing. The patent office was about to send him an email during his live interview. And by the time he read it, his career was already over. But let me tell you this story from the very beginning. If you like the story, please let us know in the comments. Our team loves your feedback. My name is Elena Marquez, and for 2 years I built the thing that made my CEO famous. Not during office hours. Not on company hardware. Not with company resources. I built it after midnight in my apartment, with cold coffee beside my keyboard and my laptop overheating on a folded kitchen towel. I built it on Sundays while my friends were at brunch. I built it during holidays, after meetings where men in expensive shirts explained artificial intelligence to me, like I had just discovered electricity. I called it Asteria. It was an AI optimization engine that could predict operational failures before they happened. Not just flag problems. Not just produce dashboards. Asteria could analyze procurement, logistics, staffing, pricing, energy use, supplier delays, weather patterns, and customer behavior, then quietly recommend the smallest change that would prevent the biggest loss. It didn't look dramatic. That was the point. The best systems don't look powerful. They look boring until they save you $400 million. At Ardent Systems, where I worked as a senior machine learning architect, everyone talked about innovation. Posters in the hallways said things like, "Build the future," and "Disrupt everything." But the real culture was simple. Executives took credit. Engineers took notes. Our CEO, Grant Voss, was a master of that system. He had the kind of face investors trusted immediately. Silver hair, clean jawline, calm voice, custom suits that made him look like he had never waited in line for anything in his life. He didn't understand half the technology we built, but he understood how to stand beside it. He knew when to pause. He knew when to smile. He knew how to say, "My team and I have been quietly working on something extraordinary," when what he really meant was, "Someone below me did something I can monetize." For years, I kept my head down. I wasn't naive. I knew how companies worked. I knew that anything built on company time could become company property. So I was careful. Painfully careful. I bought my own laptop. I rented my own cloud environment. I registered a private holding company called Marquez Strategic Technologies LLC. I documented every design decision, every commit, every model revision, every architecture diagram, every private test, every timestamp. I even sent sealed disclosure packets to my attorney once every quarter, just in case the world ever decided to become ugly. The world did not disappoint me. The first time Grant saw Asteria, he wasn't supposed to. I had been testing a limited demo using public logistics data, comparing Asteria's predictions against historical supply chain failures. The results were absurdly good. Too good to ignore. A regional food distributor had lost $18 million the previous year because of a routing delay tied to fuel pricing, weather shifts, and one underperforming vendor in Ohio. Asteria identified the risk 9 days earlier than their internal systems would have. 9 days. In logistics, 9 days is the difference between a problem and a board meeting. I made the mistake of showing a small piece of it to my direct manager, Patrick, because I thought he was safe. Patrick was not evil. That was his problem. Evil people at least know they are dangerous. Patrick was ambitious, nervous, and desperate to be noticed. He watched the demo in a glass conference room on the 23rd floor. His mouth opened slightly. "Elena," he said, "this is not an internal tool." "I know." "No, I mean, This is bigger than Ardent. I know that too. Does Grant know about this? No, I said. Patrick looked at the screen again. He should. I closed my laptop. No, I said again, but this time my voice was colder. Patrick smiled in that corporate way people smile when they have already decided to betray you politely. I just think something this powerful needs executive visibility. I looked him directly in the eye. This is my personal project, built outside work, with my own resources. It is not Ardent property. He nodded too quickly. Of course. Absolutely. I understand. That was a Tuesday. On Friday, Grant invited me to his office. His assistant called it a strategic alignment conversation. That phrase alone told me everything. Grant's office overlooked the river. Behind his desk were framed magazine covers, innovation awards, and a black and white photo of him shaking hands with a former president. He didn't stand when I entered. Elena, he said warmly, as if we had known each other for years instead of speaking maybe 8 times in my entire career. I hear you've been tinkering. Tinkering? With predictive optimization. I sat down slowly. Grant leaned back. Patrick showed me enough to get me excited. Of course he did. I want to be very clear, I said. That work is mine. It was developed independently, outside company time, outside company infrastructure, and outside my employment duties. Grant smiled. There are smiles that welcome you. There are smiles that warn you. Grant's smile belonged in a legal deposition. Elena, you're a valued employee of Ardent Systems. Your work here shapes how you think. Your knowledge base, your exposure, your professional environment, all of that comes from this company. My employment agreement is specific, I said. Company ownership applies to inventions created using company resources or directly related to assigned company projects. Asteria was not. He tilted his head. Asteria? I said nothing. He had not known the name. That mattered. Grant's smile thinned. Let's not become adversarial. I am offering you a path to be part of something much larger. What path? We integrate your prototype under Ardent's Innovation Division. You lead implementation, senior director title, compensation review next cycle. Next cycle, I repeated. He spread his hands like he was being generous. Success has stages. I stood. No. Grant blinked once. People like him are not used to hearing small words with sharp edges. No? You do not have permission to use my software, my architecture, my models, my documentation, or my name in connection with Asteria. His face did not change, but the room did. Something invisible closed. Elena, he said softly, be careful. People who hold too tightly to ideas often end up watching someone else execute them better. I picked up my bag. And people who steal things often forget paper trails exist. That was the last honest conversation we ever had. For 3 weeks, nothing happened. That was what made it worse. Grant didn't threaten me. Patrick avoided eye contact. My access remained unchanged. My meetings continued. The company moved around me like a machine pretending one of its gears had not cracked. Then the retreat invitation arrived. Ardent Systems Executive Innovation Summit. 3 days, 1 vision. The future begins here. It was being held at a luxury resort in Napa Valley. Investors, board members, strategic partners, selected employees, and a CNBC business segment crew would be there for Grant's keynote. The title of his keynote was The Asteria Platform: How Ardent Will Redefine Enterprise Intelligence. I stared at the email for a long time, not because I was shocked, because I wasn't. That is the moment you realize betrayal rarely arrives wearing a mask. Sometimes it arrives formatted as a calendar invite. I forwarded the retreat agenda to my attorney. Then I opened the secure folder where I kept every record: source code hashes, private repository logs, cloud invoices, domain registrations, model training receipts, notarized invention disclosures, patent provisional filing timestamps, license declarations, operating agreement for Marquez Strategic Technologies. And one document Grant knew nothing about: a private software license issued by my holding company to me personally, prohibiting transfer, sub-licensing, demonstration, or commercial use by any third party without written authorization. I had created it because my attorney was paranoid. At the time, I thought it was excessive. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. The retreat was beautiful in the way expensive things are beautiful when they are designed to distract people from ethics. Glass walls, vineyards, fire pits, soft jazz, name badges with embossed logos. Grant moved through the crowd like a king among donors. Every investor wanted 5 minutes with him. Every board member looked pleased. Every executive wore the expression of someone already calculating stock options. I saw Patrick near the bar. He looked pale. When he noticed me, he turned away. That told me he knew enough to be scared, but not enough to confess. The keynote began at 7 p.m. in a ballroom with black curtains and theatrical lighting. A massive screen behind the stage displayed a single glowing word: Asteria. My word, my system, my 2 years, my nights, my weekends, my missed birthdays, my quiet sacrifices. Grant walked on stage to applause. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "every generation has a moment when technology stops assisting business and begins transforming it." People leaned forward. He was good, I'll give him that. He spoke about market inefficiency, predictive intelligence, autonomous decision systems, and enterprise resilience. He described Asteria as if it had come to him in a dream between investor calls. Then he said the sentence that made the entire room applaud. 2 years ago, I challenged our leadership team to imagine a system that could see failure before failure saw us. 2 years ago? I almost laughed. 2 years ago, Grant had told the engineering division to make dashboards more exciting. But the room loved it. He clicked the remote. A demo appeared on the screen. My demo. Not all of it. A weaker version. A stolen skeleton wearing expensive clothes. Someone had tried to reconstruct Asteria from whatever Patrick had seen and whatever internal engineers had been pressured to build fast. It looked convincing to people who didn't know the difference between a violin and a violin case. Grant walked them through predictive savings, manufacturing optimization, vendor risk prevention, energy load balancing. He announced 3 pilot clients. He announced projected annual savings of $1.2 billion across the enterprise sector. Then he announced Ardent would be filing full patent protection around the Asteria platform. The applause lasted almost 30 seconds. A woman from a venture fund stood. A board member wiped his eyes like he had witnessed history. Patrick clapped with his hands low and his face dead. I sat in the 3rd row, silent. A junior analyst beside me whispered, "Can you believe we built this?" I said, "No." She smiled, thinking I meant wonder. I meant evidence. After the keynote, Grant found me near the terrace. He held a champagne glass but hadn't drunk from it. "Elena," he said, "I'm surprised you stayed for the whole thing." "I wanted to see how much you used." He chuckled. "Still territorial." "Still accurate." He stepped closer. "You're smart, so I'll speak plainly. The market won't care who had the first idea. It will care who scales it." "That's what thieves always say when they find investors." His jaw tightened. "You should be careful how you talk to me in public. You should be careful what you file with the patent office." For half a second, his eyes sharpened. There it was. Fear. Tiny, quick, buried under arrogance. Then he smiled again. Elena, by Monday morning, every major business outlet will be calling Asteria an ardent breakthrough. You can either become part of that story or become someone bitter on the outside of it. I looked past him at the vineyard. The sun was setting. Everything looked gold. That seemed unfair somehow. Betrayal should come with uglier weather. I don't need to be part of your story, I said. I wrote my own. I walked away before he could respond. By Monday, Grant was everywhere. CNBC, Bloomberg, tech podcasts, investor newsletters. A photo of him standing in front of the word Asteria ran under headlines like, Ardent Systems CEO unveils AI platform that could transform global operations. The stock jumped 18% before noon. Board members sent congratulatory emails. Employees reposted clips. Patrick sent me one message. I'm sorry. I did not reply. My attorney, Nina Shaw, called at 12:17 p.m. You saw the filings? She asked. Yes. They filed aggressively. How aggressively? Patent application, trademark claim, investor disclosure, commercial pilot announcements, and a press statement implying 2 years of internal development. Good, I said. Nina paused. That is not the usual response. The more they claim, the more they document the lie. That's true, she said, but this will get ugly. It already is. No, she said. Right now it's offensive. Ugly comes when powerful people realize they might lose. She was right. On Tuesday morning, HR invited me to a workplace conduct conversation. I was accused of being visibly unsupportive during a major company milestone. On Wednesday, my access to 2 internal systems was suspended, pending review. On Thursday, Patrick resigned. On Friday, Grant went on CNBC for a live interview. That was the day everything broke. The segment was scheduled for 3:40 p.m. Eastern. Grant sat in Ardent's media room wearing a navy suit and a pale blue tie. Behind him was a digital backdrop showing the Asteria logo. The CNBC host smiled like she was already convinced. Grant, Wall Street is calling Asteria one of the most important enterprise AI developments of the year. You've described this as your breakthrough vision. When did you first realize this could change the market? Grant smiled. There was that pause again. Perfect. Controlled. Presidential. I began thinking seriously about operational intelligence a few years ago, he said. The idea was simple. What if a company could anticipate disruption before it happened? My attorney and I watched from her conference room. On the table between us sat a laptop, 2 coffees, and a printed copy of the emergency petition Nina had filed with the patent office that morning. It included my provisional patent timestamps, my software license, my code repository records, my private company ownership documents, and a declaration that Ardent Systems had filed materially false inventorship and ownership claims. The host continued, And Ardent owns the underlying intellectual property? Grant leaned slightly forward. Absolutely. Asteria was developed through Ardent's internal innovation framework, under my direction. Nina made a small sound. Not a laugh, not quite. More like a lawyer hearing someone step on a landmine and appreciating the clarity of the footprint. At 3:47 p.m., Grant glanced down, just once. His phone had lit up on the desk. He kept talking. The host asked about patents. Grant began answering, then his eyes moved again. This time, he stopped mid-sentence. It was only half a second, but live television is merciless. Half a second becomes a spotlight. The host tilted her head. Grant, are you still with us? Yes, he said quickly. Apologies. He tried to smile, but something had changed in his face. His mouth remembered the interview. His eyes had gone somewhere else. Nina's laptop pinged. She opened an email. Then she turned the screen toward me. The subject line read, USPTO notice regarding Asteria-related application. Inventorship and ownership discrepancy. One email. That was all it took. Not a trial, not a shouting match, not a dramatic confrontation in a boardroom. One email from the patent office, copied to Arden's legal department, outside counsel, and my attorney, stating that serious questions had been raised regarding inventorship, ownership, prior provisional filings, and the legal authority of Ardent Systems to claim the Asteria-related invention. It did not say Grant had stolen anything. Government emails are not written for drama. They are written for consequences. The host kept going, unaware of the exact wording but very aware that Grant Voss had just gone pale on live television. Grant, can you clarify whether the patent filing has already been accepted? Grant swallowed. Our legal team handles the specifics of filing procedure. That's not quite what I asked. Grant blinked. CNBC hosts can smell blood through fiber optic cables. Is there any dispute, she asked slowly, over Arden's ownership of Asteria? For the first time since I had known him, Grant Voss had no prepared sentence. His silence lasted 3 seconds. 3 seconds is nothing in life. On live television, it is a confession wearing a suit. By 4:10 p.m., Ardent stock had started falling. By 4:30, the CNBC clip was everywhere. By 5, the board had called an emergency meeting. By 6:15, 3 pilot clients paused their agreements. By 7:40, Ardent's general counsel contacted Nina. Their first offer was insulting. A consulting agreement. A retroactive internal inventor credit. A generous discretionary bonus. Nina read it aloud and laughed for real. I told her to reject it. Their second offer came at 10:30 p.m. Senior Vice President title, equity package, public acknowledgement of contribution, no admission of wrongdoing. Rejected. At midnight, Grant emailed me directly. No lawyer copied, no assistant, just Grant. Elena, this has gone too far. We can resolve this privately. Think about your future. Litigation will hurt everyone. I stared at the message. Then I replied with one sentence. You presented my future as your own. I never heard from him directly again. The next morning, the board placed Grant on temporary leave. They used careful language. Pending review, governance questions, intellectual property concerns, commitment to transparency. Corporate statements are designed to make explosions sound like weather reports. But inside Ardent, everyone knew. Employees who had ignored me suddenly sent messages. Some apologized. Some asked if I was okay. Some pretended they had always suspected something. Patrick called me from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Elena, he said, voice shaking. I need to say it properly. I'm sorry. I said nothing. I thought if Grant saw it, he'd bring you in. I thought you'd get promoted. I didn't know he would... Steal it? Patrick exhaled. Yes. You didn't know because knowing would have required courage. He was quiet for a long time. I gave a statement to the board, he said, and to your attorney. I told them the first time I saw it, you said it was yours. Independent. Outside work. That mattered. Not emotionally. Legally. Thank you, I said. I don't expect forgiveness. Good, I said, and ended the call. 2 weeks later, Ardent's board invited me to a private meeting. This time I did not go alone. Nina sat beside me. Across the table were 6 board members, 2 outside attorneys, the interim CEO, and the kind of crisis consultant companies hire when truth becomes expensive. They were polite, very polite. That is how you know you have leverage. The chairwoman, Vivian Cole, opened a folder. Ms. Marquez, first, on behalf of the board, I want to acknowledge that serious mistakes were made. Nina smiled faintly. Mistakes? Vivian adjusted. Serious misconduct appears to have occurred. Better. They wanted a deal. Not because they respected me, because the market had punished them. Ardent had lost $2.8 billion in market value in 13 days. The SEC had begun asking questions about investor disclosures. Clients were frozen. Employees were leaking to reporters. Grant's reputation had turned toxic overnight. And Asteria, the real Asteria, was still mine. Not theirs, mine. Vivian folded her hands. What would you need in order to consider a licensing relationship with Ardent Systems? For a moment, I thought about the younger version of myself. The woman who used to sit in meetings taking notes, while executives repeated her ideas louder. The woman who worked late and believed excellence would eventually become visible. The woman who thought being reasonable would protect her from unreasonable people. I wished I could tell her something. Not that everything would be fine. That would be a lie. I would tell her, document everything. Kindness is not evidence. Hard work is not ownership. And silence is only powerful when you have proof behind it. I looked at Vivian. First, I said, Ardent publicly retracts all claims that Asteria was developed under Grant Voss's direction. Nina slid a page across the table. Second, Ardent acknowledges Marquez Strategic Technologies as the sole owner of the Asteria software, architecture, and related intellectual property. Another page. Third, any license is limited, expensive, revocable upon breach, and excludes derivative patent claims. One board member shifted in his chair. Define expensive. Nina did. Nobody spoke for 8 seconds. Then Vivian said, That number is unusually high. I looked at her. So was the applause. The room went still, not because I had raised my voice. I hadn't. That was the thing they never understood. I was never dangerous because I was angry. I was dangerous because I had stopped needing them to believe me. Grant resigned 3 days later. His statement said he wanted to spend more time with family and pursue new advisory opportunities. That is executive language for falling off a building and calling it a career transition. Patrick's statement became part of the settlement file. The patent office proceedings continued, but Ardent withdrew the disputed claims. Their trademark application was amended. Their investor disclosures were corrected. The CNBC host did a follow-up segment titled, The Inventor Behind Asteria Speaks. I almost declined. I did not want fame. Fame had been Grant's addiction, not mine. But Nina said, If you don't tell the story, people like him will tell a softer version. So I went. Same network, different chair. The host asked me what it felt like to watch someone else present my invention to investors. I thought about lying, saying it was painful, saying it was shocking, saying I felt betrayed. All true, but not complete. So I told the deeper truth. It felt familiar, I said. The host paused. Familiar? Yes. A lot of people know what it feels like to have their work repeated by someone more powerful and suddenly treated as brilliant. The studio went quiet. I continued. The difference is, this time, I had receipts. The clip went viral. Not because I cried, not because I attacked Grant, because millions of people recognize the shape of the theft. The boss who says, "Great point," and repeats your idea in the next meeting. The manager who removes your name from the deck. The founder who calls your invention Our vision. The executive who mistakes your silence for weakness. Asteria launched 6 months later under my company, not as an Ardent product, as mine. Ardent became our first licensee, under terms so strict their lawyers probably still wake up sweating. The system worked. Quietly, efficiently, beautifully. Within its first year, Asteria helped prevent major losses across manufacturing, shipping, and healthcare networks. Not because it was flashy, because it was accurate. Grant disappeared into private consulting for a while. Then a business magazine ran a small piece about leadership scandals in tech, and his name appeared somewhere in the middle. Not the headline, that felt right. He had spent his life trying to be the face of other people's work. In the end, he became a footnote in mine. People still ask why I didn't confront him during the retreat, why I didn't stand up in the ballroom and shout, "That's mine!" I understand the question. It would have made a better movie scene. But real power doesn't always announce itself at the moment of insult. Sometimes it sits in the audience, silent, watching, letting the thief speak clearly into microphones, letting investors applaud, letting cameras record every false claim in high definition. Because when someone is building their own trap, the smartest thing you can do is stop interrupting them. Grant thought the applause meant he had won. He thought my silence meant I had nothing. He thought ownership was about who stood on stage. But ownership is not applause. Ownership is timestamps, licenses, source code, filing records, legal authority. The quiet, boring documents arrogant people never read until it is too late. The last time I saw the retreat video, I noticed something I had missed before. When Grant first said, "I challenged our leadership team to imagine this," the camera briefly cut to the audience. For less than 2 seconds, you can see me sitting in the third row, hands folded, face calm. Everyone around me is clapping. I am not. At the time, people probably thought I looked defeated. Now I know what I really looked like. Patient.
Select now another video in our series of family and company dramas. They are all powerful stories of people coming back stronger after they have been humiliated or hurt by family members or their management. Always make sure you stay strong. Let nobody ever tell you what you are worth. You know the best. Of course.